Alrighty then. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Matthew Baker of Beautiful New York Tours, and today's topic came to me from a longtime client of mine, a lovely lady who teaches an all-girls school in the UK, and they have come to tour with me, she and her class, a few times over the years, and it's funny because in the UK, the way the school calendar works, they always come in February, which is really wonderful because February is a very slow time in the New York City tourism industry anyway, so I'm usually very grateful for the income. But it also means that this year they came and took their tour before all of this quarantine and lockdown and various difficulties before any of that happened. So it was very nice to see them, and in fact, even nicer than I realized to see them. And sadly, while it was great to see them individually, they are a perfect example of the kind of group that I miss a great deal because normally that sort of school group I'd be with a different one every day at this time of year, and that is, of course, simply not happening. At any rate, she asked me to do a video about the Alice in Wonderland statue in Central Park, and initially my instinct was not a good one. I was tempted to sort of get very snobbish and say, no, it's too famous. It's too obvious. I want to do the more obscure stuff. And then I calmed down and said to myself, Matt, get over yourself. It's always the first time for the visitor. The guest is experiencing New York from a very different perspective from what I do. So even if I find it, super iconic, that doesn't mean everyone else does, and I need to remember that and accept the challenge of finding a fresh perspective on a major work of public art like this statue. The Alice in Wonderland statue in Central Park, which is just to the north of the boat pond, whose actual name is Conservatory Water, but everyone just calls it the boat pond. It was designed by the Spanish sculptor Jose de Creft, and it was intended for people to climb on. I mean, every time I take a group there and they see little kids climbing on the statue, they think, oh, should people be climbing on a statue? It's not a museum piece. It's a work of public art in a children's park. It was absolutely intended to be climbed on. And indeed it is. In a bronze sculpture, the shiniest part is always the part that is touched the most often. So from all the kids climbing, you can see, of course, the mushrooms are worn to a nice golden sheen, even though a lot of those kids are too young to be on mushrooms. Now, de Creft quite famously used his daughter as the model for Alice, although the bulk of the statue is modeled on the illustrations from the first edition of Lewis Carroll's book, Alice in Wonderland. But his daughter is Alice, and the other departure from the book illustrations is the Mad Hatter, who, of course, is everybody's favorite, featured character in Alice. The Mad Hatter is a caricature, essentially, of George Delacourt. And George Delacourt was the benefactor who commissioned the statue. It was in memory of his wife Margarita, who loved children. George was the head of Dell Publishing, and his name is all over Central Park. He was one of the benefactors for the Central Park Zoo, and so his name is on the clock at the zoo. The Delacourt Theater is where Shakespeare in the Park is performed, and lots of mentions of Delacourt all over town, thanks to his generosity and donations. Now, it's no secret that I'm a great lover of poetry, and one of the things I love about the statue is all of the verses from Alice in Wonderland that are engraved in bronze in the ground around the statue. There's one plate that reminds us, of course, probably the most famous verses in Alice. "'Twas brillig, and the slithy tove did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borough grove, and the mome raths outgrabe." So these and many other little accoutrements in the statue really make it a very well-loved section of the park. It's over on the east side, right by Fifth Avenue, just south of the 76th Street entrance to the park. And it's definitely a very well-loved part of any Central Park tour. There's a little cafe right there. And, of course, the most important stop you can ever make on any tour, there are convenient public restrooms right near the statue as well. So once we are all done with this quarantine and lockdown and are ready to take tours, if you would like to tour Central Park with me and stop by the Alice in Wonderland statue, please check me out at Beautiful New York Tours. You can search Beautiful New York Tours on Facebook or email me at baker.tours@yahoo.com. Again, that is baker.tours@yahoo. Thank you very much.